Hello and welcome to another Oda episode of The Eternal Law. On the last Oda episode, Echigo province came under attack. The Honma were the first to storm it, attacking the castle. I fought this battle myself, but the replay was corrupted so I couldn't show you it. However, you'll have to believe me that the result was a win. Then the Chosokabe landed forces in Ise but were quickly dispatched by Nobuyuki's army. Then Takayama Muneyori took on a huge Amako force in a decisive battle over Wakasa province. In this battle, we had a giant spear wall that faced off against the enemy's broken reinforcements and pretty much annihilated them with ease. Then the Takayama landed a fairly elite force in Makawa province, but Nobunaga and Nobuyuki teamed up to defeat them. Muneyori's army then pushed on to capture Tango province from the Amako, finally some gains on the western front. Then the Honma came in for yet another attack on Echigo, which we're about to see. Let's continue. A weapon with honor will always beat that without. Each weapon has its usefulness and its weaknesses. The firearm is a truly mighty weapon for a man behind a wall, but the untrained mind of a peasant cannot strike a bird from the sky as we can. They cannot rain death from the heavens as we can. They cannot see the true purpose and merit of every shot as we can, honourable brothers. Today we show that fire and shot are no match for the elegance of the natural bow and the skill of a true warrior. So welcome back, and as I just said, the Honma forces are now making their attack on Echigo Castle. They're all coming from a southerly direction, which actually is quite annoying because they have loads of bow samurai in their ranks, and the fact that they're all so close to their melee units means I can't rush out and try and distract the bow samurai and pull them away from my main defenders. So in an attempt to counter the fact that their bow samurai are just going to annihilate anyone I put on the outer tier of the castle, I put one unit of Yari Ashigaru in a loose formation in an attempt to draw their fire. Meanwhile, the rest of my forces are going to be forming up on the next tier. I had to pull loads of guys around from the north side because I had been defending from all directions, so gradually I'm getting everyone into position. Here I'm pulling in Matchlock Ashigaru to overlook the second tier, and now I'm beginning to try and distract the archers by running these Ashigaru up and down on the outer tier. The enemy archers will keep having to move to get back into range as I move away, which will pull the enemy archers closer, which is always a good thing. Plus, those moving units will take fewer casualties when the enemy are close enough that their volleys are always in range. So they're going to be rushing up and down. They've already started to take losses. They're absorbing the enemy's fire arrows, which is good news. Seeing that they were beginning to take the fire, I thought I'll pull the rest of my melee units out and hope that the bow samurai keep firing at these Ashigaru rather than the long Yaris coming down from the tier above. Unfortunately, this plan didn't really work. The enemy were clever enough that they shifted targets to my more powerful long Yari Ashigaru standing behind my men, and now those long Yari Ashigaru are taking the punishment that I feared they would if I'd had them there in the first place. So I've saved a few of them from the arrows of the enemy, not enough of them it seems. So I'm still having to loosen these formations up before the enemy arrive, which is always bad news, as it means if I want to get a spear wall going before the enemy charge hits, I'm going to have to really micromanage it and sacrifice a load of my men, as those tight formations are going to be super weak against the enemy's bow fire. So the enemy are now coming into the tier. They're just about to arrive. These regiments have already taken fairly heavy damage, and they're now being attacked in the flank out of formation, loosely spaced. Pretty much the worst possible situation for these long Yari Ashigaru, so I'm working to form up a spear wall and get them properly arranged. I'm just about doing so in the centre here, and they're beginning to do their work. But of course, as usual, I'm not relying on the spear wall to defeat the enemy. I'm relying on the Matchlock Ashigaru on the wall above. I just need the spear wall to lock the enemy in place, form big blobs of enemy troops that the matchlocks can fire into, and not have to worry too much about being accurate because there are just so many enemy targets to fire at. I'm moving more reserves ready to move down onto the outer tier because my units were taking casualties very quickly, and it seemed like my usual sacrifice strategy was going to be foreshortened by the fact that I'm losing so many men. I do have Matchlock Ashigaru in reserve as well, who are currently drawing the enemy's bow fire. This was ideal for me. I didn't mind if the enemy fired my reserve Matchlocks because it was unlikely that I would need them because the Matchlocks on the wall aren't exactly taking casualties, plus they're a very easy and cheap unit to replace. So you can see loads of my reserves are now coming out onto the outer tier. The enemy are shifting some of their fire towards them. Literal fire in this case. These units are taking fire arrows. But at least I now have enough forces out there to stop the enemy from getting onto the next tier so I can let the matchlocks do their work. Meanwhile, outside the castle, the enemy general was running around. I sent one unit of katana samurai out of the castle to try and swoop around and take out the enemy's archers, but he got bogged down by the enemy general. But the good news is that the enemy general was killed attempting to fight with those katana samurai. Here you can see the matchlocks have been doing their work well. There's a huge pile of bodies and a very depleted enemy unit trying to retreat. I lost all of my men in that area, but at least the enemy lost theirs as well. Here we can see that my defensive line has pretty much just about managed to overpower the enemy. More matchlock fire over the next minute will probably eradicate the rest of them. Some of the enemy archers started retreating because my bow warrior monks started engaging with the enemy archers. I also moved up my own bow samurai closer to the battlefront so they could fire up and over the castle defences and hit some of the enemy's bow samurai. Enough of them were killed that they started to rout. Here is the enemy general who was fighting with the katana samurai, and here's how he died, attempting to escape. My bow warrior monks hit him with a volley and took him down. And so decisive victory has been won. It was a very messy victory because all of those men on the south side there got really broken up. We took huge casualties. You can see on the ground here there's a big mix of Oda and Honma bodies. So we're going to have to go back to the battle results screen and see exactly how many men we lost. But the good news is the castle remains in our hands. So we lost over 1,000 troops, tons of regiments there. It wasn't as bad as the last defense against the Honma, so we've improved in terms of fighting the Honma over the last couple of terms, especially because I have upped the power of the defenders. Oh god, but more Honma forces are already on the way. So Echigo is not going to catch a break. The Honma are going for it yet again. Now in the next turn I get this mission to march on Kyoto, a very interesting mission indeed. Still, I don't think I'm quite powerful enough to challenge the shogunate because they have 2 stacks hanging around Kyoto, and really back over on the west side I need all the men I can just to defend against the other clans. So here's the situation. The Honma are once again coming at Echigo with a powerful army. This army looks more powerful than the last one, a pretty dodgy situation, and I'm beginning to have to consider sending forces up from Kozuke to defend Echigo because Kozuke isn't really being the focus of the enemy's offensives, so having all these forces around here guarding it isn't really going to be helpful. I really thought they would attack Kozuke almost straight away after I took it, but they didn't for some reason. So Toyotomi is going to pull men back up towards Echigo using his campaign movement range bonuses to get all the way up there in one turn. Meanwhile, Kiyanori is going to resume his role as the stalwart defender by just sitting in the castle, and we're going to see if anyone comes to attack him. So now both castles are relatively well defended. All I can do is wait and see how the enemy attack. Our lord has a somewhat reactionary approach to the art of strategy, but with only a handful of good men, who can blame him? I have marched men to plug gaps in his defences ever since I was brought into his service. An important, but I must say unpopular role. My men lack the glory of the conqueror despite constant victories. Kosuke was a long-awaited break, but now I fear we will be back to the way of the repairman for another handful of years. Or perhaps I can turn defense into something else. So now we're focusing on Muneyuri's situation. He's just taken Tango. There are some traitorous Oda men around here who turned over to the Amiko forces during the end turn sequence, so I just pushed them away from the castle. And now I'm considering what to do next. Muneyuri could either head west and attack Tajima. He could head south and go and attack the lands of the Hitano clan, who really have left me alone and I've been leaving them alone, so I wasn't too interested in that. So I decided to go for Tajima since it's an Amiko clan province. I smashed out of the way an enemy force who retreated quickly when Muneyuri approached the castle. I had just enough movement points to attack the castle. Unfortunately, the enemy force was able to reinforce the battle. However, the balance bar was sufficiently in my favour that I thought I'll just auto-resolve. It wasn't the best result, only a close victory in fact. But still, most of the losses were in the Ashigaru, who will get back quickly, and the castle is ours, so we further weakened our foes, the Amiko, and strengthened our own position there on the western side of the domain. Now we also saw during the last end turn sequence that some Tokugawa forces were disappearing in Mikawa, and I was wondering where they could disappear to. I couldn't see anywhere that they could hide in the area. and was quite curious about where they could be, I decided to risk sending a force to rush down to Totomi, but they didn't get ambushed on the way, so I decided if they are hidden, they're not hidden near enough the road that they can ambush me. So I decided it's relatively safe to send forces to go and guard Totomi properly. So I'm going to send Nobunaga over there as well, making sure to go around the north side of the castle because the south side is nearer to the area where I think the Tokugawa forces could be hiding. I'm also going to use my forces in Mikawa to set an ambush beside the road with Nobuyuki in command, so if they do go for Mikawa suddenly, then they will face an ambush themselves. So in the end turn sequence, we see the Tokugawa rushing about on the Totomi border, not 100% sure what they're doing. Then a massive Uesugi force appears and goes right into the assault at Kozuke. This is not a very good situation at all. We're outbalanced, according to the balance bar. Kiinori is going to be outnumbered both in terms of sheer men and in terms of samurai, because he has a very limited supply of samurai. The enemy have absolutely tons, as you can see. They have tons of bow pirates as well, who aren't quite as good as bow samurai at attacking castles, but still will prove to be equally inconvenient for us attempting to mount a coherent defense. So all I can do is go onto the battlefield and see if I can pull a victory out of this situation. The castle is a big I shape with two wings coming off the sides. I've got my men guarding the wings and all of my missile units in the I section. I'm sort of rearranging right away because the enemy appeared to be coming mostly from the west side, coming in 3 groups, the majority of their men coming from the southwesterly direction. They have these bow pirates you can see here coming from the northwest. They actually have 4 more regiments there who we can't see because pirate units can hide, sometimes even while running. So they are out there and they'll appear a little bit later on. They also have their giant reinforcement army coming from the south. At this stage I can't quite tell where they're going to go, so I had to defend both the south and east sides of the castle still, just in case they went around there. So the enemy closed in and their many archers began to fire. The same bad situation that we had against the Honma earlier in the episode, but again I used the same strategy, using Yari Ashigaru spaced out to draw their fire, and it worked pretty well. On the north side, all of those enemy archers are closing in. However, before the archers got into range to fire, all of their cavalry dismounted and started attacking the walls. The good side for me is that those cavalry are going to be annihilated by my archers. The climb will kill a bunch of them, and I have some Ashigaru inside to kill the rest. The negative side is that it means my archers are distracted from firing at the enemy's archers, who themselves are attacking my melee units inside. They're firing at these Naginata Ashigaru. Luckily their angle isn't very good, so tons of their arrows are getting stuck in the castle wall before they actually reach the killing zone. So my men aren't taking too many losses, and when I pull my men back it draws the enemy forwards because they want to remain in range of their target. So I'm going to try and pull the enemy's bow pirates closer and closer to the walls so that I can annihilate them with my own archers. Now on the west side, the enemy have put a few regiments into the wing of the castle and now advancing. I have 3 units of long Yari Ashigaru to receive them and tons of bow Ashigaru. However, the majority of their forces are actually going round to my relatively unguarded north side. So this isn't ideal. Also not ideal is the fact that the enemy's bow samurai have decided to switch targets to my long Yari Ashigaru walls, who are now taking serious casualties. The upside though is that the enemy are also taking serious casualties. You can see these pirate units who are coming in are going to be engaging the spear wall from the front, which is bad news, and arrows are just coming in from every direction and annihilating them because I have so many bow Ashigaru overlooking that section. So as I held on, the enemy's reinforcement army started to make its assault. They are mostly approaching on the south side at the moment, using their archers to begin with, attacking the units I'd moved up to defend against them. I had moved some of my units from the east wing of the castle to defend the south side, once I realised that they were going to mostly go for that area. So I'm forming up a little bottleneck here on the bridge of the I shape. And I'm going to have a few sacrificial units to buy me some time to set that up, because I have to get some slow moving units off the east side to come up onto the south part of the castle. Meanwhile on the north side, all those enemy units who we saw rushing around are now making their attack. Some of them are coming in a very awkward angle for me. Their general in fact is coming in right on this northeast side where I had almost no men, but I pulled some bow samurai back just to block them, because if I didn't block them they could go all the way to the tent shoe without being opposed. So my bow samurai are going to engage with that enemy general in melee, a situation which won't go very well for me because the general's bodyguards are elite swordsmen who in theory will cut my bow samurai to pieces. So to help them out, I charged in Kiinori himself on horseback. His mounted katana should do quite well against the enemy's dismounted katanas, so I was able to take out a whole bunch of those guards before Kiinori became the target of the enemy archers and I had to get rid of them. There's Kiinori himself slicing the head off an enemy bodyguard, getting his sword dirty. So that situation didn't go too badly. I feared I was going to lose the Tenshu there. Luckily, we managed to contain the enemy. On the south side, I am attempting to contain the enemy. I'm using these garrison Ashigaru units as sacrifices to hold the enemy back close to the wall, as I said, whilst I arrange a proper formation, which you can see happening here, and trying to get some spear walls together. Those spear walls are taking a limited number of arrows from outside, but at the moment I'm confident that they can hang on.
You think you can take this castle from me? With that puny force? Ha! I have fewer samurai than you do common Ashigaru, and yet you're so scared of defeat that you must contribute the weight of your own sword to the attack? A pathetic excuse for a commander of men. Don't die just yet. Survive and see your army broken and devoured by my loyal men. We guard this castle because it is ours. The will of heaven cannot be changed on this fact, and thus the flag of our Tenshu shall too never be changed.
So finally my sacrificial units were either broken or destroyed, and the enemy started to get through to the little line I'd set up here on the bottleneck going towards the Tenshu. I do need to stop the enemy from coming up this corridor in the castle, because the Tenshu is defended at the moment only by bow Ashigaru, so if they got melee units through, they might be able to hack their way to the Tenshu and cheekily capture it. So I want to keep the enemy out here as long as I can. Luckily they're being distracted, hunting down some Rounty Yari Ashigaru. This means all the bow Ashigaru who used to be firing out over the west side of the castle can redirect their fire to hit these big blobs of enemy troops that have formed up, take out a few of them. The enemy archers outside have taken sufficient losses that I've stopped caring about them. There's just a few bow Ashigaru firing inaccurately into my spear wall. I'm taking a few casualties, but I'm prepared to accept this for now. There's not much I can do about it anyway. I've now pulled all the units from the east side of the castle to fight here on the south side. The enemy weren't going for the east side, it appears. They've committed fully to this area, and now they are starting to take casualties. They are pushing into the spear wall as I had hoped, and slowly getting cut down. My archers are still attempting to kill some of them as well, and none of them are getting through towards the Tenshu. The dangerous situation is here on the north side, where my men are getting outnumbered and outclassed. There's a whole bunch of enemy samurai and bow pirates fighting for my lone sword Ashigaru, both of whom will be able to take out my men one-on-one. So you can see, in order to prevent the enemy breaking through, I've actually deployed Kiyonori on foot to go and to stand in the middle of them and inspire my men and have his bodyguards fight with the enemy samurai. The excellent news over here is that the enemy general has been killed. My bow samurai managed to kill him in melee combat, and the survivors can now outflank the enemy's big blob of troops and fire into their backs, and they'll be inflicting devastating casualties at that close range with that excellent angle. The enemy did use some samurai retainers to sneakily come in the east side since I left it unguarded, and they went straight for the Tenshu, and you can see from the bunch of bodies around that I managed to fight them off using only bow Ashigaru. These bow Ashigaru proved somehow elite in melee combat and took out all those samurai retainers. I was very surprised by that result, and very happy of course. Back on the south side, I'm starting to actually push the enemy back towards the wall, so they're no longer really threatening to move up on the Tenshu, and now I'm just attempting to destroy them. Attacking them from the flanks with that big blob of Longyar Ashigaru there. The enemy aren't even trying to stop me doing it, so they're in big trouble. Suddenly the battle flips into my favour as all of the enemy forces on the north side rout. This is mostly because they were taking missile fire from behind, which was devastating their morale, and Kiyonori was not budging. He was just slicing the enemy to pieces. Here's the man himself. Only a few of the lone sword Ashigaru survived, but they did manage to take out the vast majority of that big blob of enemy troops that was coming in. So they put in an excellent performance, and the army losses caused the entire enemy army to rout, so the enemy army on the south side was destroyed as well. So a fantastic result. We've kept Kosuke in our hands and saved Kiyonori from an untimely death at the hands of this Uesugi army. Let's head to the battle results screen and see the details. We lost a couple of garrison units. Those were the sacrifices I mentioned, some Naginata Ashigaru too. Overall, the enemy lost double the amount of men that we did, and the castle is safe. So I'm happy with that result because I was expecting it to go much worse. The Uesugi did reinforce straight away, you might notice there, and the Chosakabe are landing forces near Setsu. Interesting, need to watch out for that. But distracting me from that situation is the fact that the Hatakeyama are finally getting into the offensive at Echigo. They have laid siege to the castle. They didn't go right into the offensive, which is probably because Toyotomi's army hanging around dissuaded them from doing so. The offensive would have been quite bloody, so they're going to be waiting for their reinforcement army now. They do have that extra reinforcement army coming down just to the northeast of their position. So this means the onus is on me to attack them now, because if I wait any longer, the reinforcements will arrive and the situation will only get worse. However, I'm not going to have any reinforcements arriving. There was tons of bad news as usual as I came in. We also had some sabotage going on in Owari that was very expensive to repair. I was quite annoyed about that, but I did need to repair it because it was impacting my ability to recruit troops. Muniuri is just finishing off some forces up there in Tajima. The situation there is actually quite secure. Now Nobuhide, who's been building up an army for a while, is now going on the offensive towards Setsu. The Chosokabe fleet actually had disappeared. It had rushed off somewhere. So I don't know what the Chosokabe landing force in the area is up to, but for now I'm pretty much just going to ignore it and continue my offensive as normal. I got all the troops I've recruited in the area together, and they're going to smash their way into Setsu. Nice advantage on the balance bar, it means I can just auto-resolve the assault. The enemy took thousands of casualties, we only took hundreds, so a fine result for our daimyo Nobuhide. And we've now actually got a very good position surrounding Kyoto as well. We can attack them from Setsu and Umi at the same time and potentially sneakily avoid engaging their second army if they really wanted to. But that's something to think about another time. Down into Toimi, I wanted Nobunaga to go on the offensive towards Suruga. I'm very cautious that the enemy might have ambushes in the forest along the road, but luckily for me, they didn't. They do have a moderately powerful force hanging around Suruga, so I decided to lay an ambush myself and buy some time to pull up reinforcements from Totoimi because they probably don't need to be there. I was going to leave Nobuyuki behind in Mikawa for now because I thought the enemy might land more forces in that area since they have been doing so recently, so I wanted an army near Owari to deal with that potential situation. So now up in Echigo, as I said, I pretty much just have to attack the enemy because things will only get worse if I don't. So now it's a slightly disadvantageous offensive battle for me. I'm going to have to try and rout this dual army of the Hatakeyama and Honma at the same time, using my slightly depleted garrison inside the castle and Toyotomi's army, which itself isn't at full strength. So let's head into the battle and see what we can pull off, and let's see if we can have enough troops left alive to defend against the next Hatakeyama army on the way.
You know, our mighty Lord Nobuhide, I always loved your clan symbol, that beautiful, delicate flower. It reminds me so much of myself. I actually had some bedsheets made with your lovely flower on them, as the sight of it helps me feel peaceful and secure as I nod off to sleep. Surely every citizen of the Oda domain feels the same. I trust our strong friendship is as undying as my faith to the Oda clan. I don't mind that you never reply to these letters, really. You must be very busy killing my men.
So the battle begins, and immediately the Hatakeyama forces start advancing on me. The Honma are coming in from behind them. They have a massive cavalry force leading the way, and then a bunch of heavy samurai backing them up. This is a offensive battle for me, so the enemy doesn't have to attack me if they don't want to, but it seems that they are intent on storming my position right away. So I decided I needed to take up a defensive posture as soon as possible to receive them, and luckily an absolutely excellent terrain feature was right in my deployment zone, so I'm going to rush to form up on it. It's a hill with a limited number of approaches due to cliffs, so the enemy are going to be funneled into little kill zones. That's really going to help me out. You can see we now are a little bit later. The enemy are now approaching the north side of the hill where they're going to be focusing their attack. Overlooking their approach on the north side, I have archers and matchlock gunners who are going to be firing at the enemy as they make their approach. I also have some bow samurai on top of the hill. Now, the main weakness of this formation is that the enemy could use their missile units to try and pick me off before they advance. They're not going to do that. They do have a missile disadvantage, and I'm just about able to fire back at them using these bow warrior monks and some bow samurai who outrange the bow ashigaru. So even though the ashigaru are firing at my front ranks, my bow samurai further back are able to counter-attack them. So after a short exchange of fire, the enemy are going to go straight into the attack, leading with cavalry, which is a bad idea because my front line is a spear wall. I have my gunners right behind who are firing over the top of the spear wall at the advancing cavalry, and they're taking casualties as they come in. I have tons of reserves behind these matchlocks as well, so I am able to afford losing some of the guys at the front if I need to. Now these guys here have an absolutely excellent enfilade position looking over where the enemy are going to bunch up right in front of the spear wall. So they're going to have an excellent time firing down into the blobs of the enemy troops as they start getting stuck against the spear wall here. The enemy's cavalry have already met their doomed fate, coming straight to the spears and disappearing. Now the enemy samurai are beginning to engage properly. They are starting to actually get around the edges there. There's an impassable bit of terrain, which means they can't quite go around my spear wall, so it's ideal for me, but they are able to slightly edge around it, so it's not a perfect position. The enemy archers outside are all but gone, taking out the vast majority of their Ashigaru, so I no longer have to worry about missile fire from them for the time being. The enemy also sent one unit around to the west side of the hill, where I have an equally powerful defense, and of course that unit's going to be obliterated. I also have similar defenses on the east side, but the enemy has chosen not to test them for now. So this matchlock unit in its excellent position, you can see it can fire right into the backs of these enemy units. So this is going to keep doing that through the entire battle pretty much, racking up the kills. My bow warrior monks are also firing across into this big blob to get as many kills as I can. And I have some bow ashigaru and bow samurai further back who are firing over the top of my spear wall where they can, but they don't really have line of sight, so they weren't really contributing to the enemy's casualties. It is these guys here firing by rank who are really doing the damage. You can see the explosions of blood in the enemy ranks every time they fire. And looking down, you can see the floor is covered in enemy bodies. More of these blood clouds are exploding out all over the place as the enemy continue to push into the spear wall. I am losing men in that spear wall. It wasn't going all that well, but the enemy were losing men far quicker due to that constant fire. Now the Honma's cavalry have arrived at the hill, and they decided to come up the east side, which wasn't engaged. So I had to make sure I started my men there. But luckily for me, the enemy just charged right into some spearmen I deployed and are proceeding to commit suicide on those spears. They're also taking matchlock fire from the guys slightly up the hill, and they're taking bow fire from guys further back. So those cavalry were completely wasted by the Honma. The main spear wall has taken some moderate casualties, so I had to replace parts of it with Yari Samurai and some Naganashi Ashigaru as well, who will help to hold the line. Still, as long as I can hold the enemy in position here, the matchlock Ashigaru on the hill just to the east there can continue firing. You see some of the enemy's cavalry got around my line and started attacking my archers, a potentially dangerous situation, but the matchlocks quickly shifted target and just annihilated them at point blank range. So that went okay actually. My flanks are being guarded by the weight of fire coming down from those matchlocks. So the Honma have sacrificed all their cavalry, and now the infantry are coming in. The infantry are going to do exactly the same thing as the Hatakeyama infantry, in that they're going to go right up the middle into my main spear wall and just sit there suffering the brunt of my missile troops. The difference was that they had a whole bunch of bow samurai actually, so they potentially pose a greater threat in terms of picking me off from range. They chose not to attempt to do that, but those bow samurai are going to be able to do some casualties just during the time it takes me to finish off their ground force. As you can see, they're actually firing at my matchlocks, which in this particular situation is annoying, because the more matchlocks I have there, the faster I'm going to be killing the enemy. They're also firing at the spear wall on the east side, but I decided I can just fall back because they don't have enough forces to actually attack the east anymore, so it doesn't even matter if I defend it. So I just got those guys out the way and pulled them back to safety. Meanwhile, my warrior monks, bow warrior monks on top of the hill there are firing down into the enemy's bow samurai, using their deadly accurate shots to take out the samurai with relative ease. The enemy samurai are going to be taking heavy casualties because they keep moving forward as well to try and engage my units further and further back, so that's only improving the chance for my bow warrior monks to take them out. So the enemy's big blob of troops just grinded against my spear wall for a while. I actually moved troops out to the east side of the hill and around to engage the enemy from the north, so now I'm crushing them from two sides. They are stuck between my troops up and down the hill whilst being fired at from the guys on top of the ridge here. They're in a very dire situation indeed. Probably not going to really enjoy being in that situation, and they indeed broke just a few seconds after I attacked them from the rear. So pretty much it was a chain rout. Once the enemy's main blob broke, all of the archers further back broke as well, and the enemy are trying to attempt a mass retreat. See them sprinting down the hill. I'm pursuing some of them, but the battle is already over. We've inflicted a hefty defeat on this Honma Hatakeyama coalition. We barely lost any troops, which bodes well for future engagements, and now the castle at Echigo is once again safe, but of course more invasions are on the way, which we'll be seeing in the next Oda episode. for this episode, but to see the Oda's biggest offensive in a long time, join me next time on the Eternal Lore.